news articles of late, you would have observed that China is trying to sideline or improve its trade relations with India. But in such scenario of international trade wars, of course, which is being led by US and its reciprocal tariff, how far is it correct to India, or for India especially, to reciprocate this kind of trade related improvements with China? Or if we try to sideline ourselves, or if we try to improve our trade relations with China, it will come at what cost? In today's video, we are going to analyze these questions. Hello and welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In today's video, we are going to answer or look at certain facts about the trade that is ongoing between India and China, and how far is it correct that India should also reciprocate in the form of China trying to sideline with, or China trying to gain proximity with India in terms of trade. But why are we carrying out all of this discussion is because the Prime Minister of India and the President of China are going to meet along the sidelines of Shanghai Cooperation Organization in China itself. So in this scenario, let's take a quick look of what has been happening since 2020 in terms of trade and in terms of investment, basically economic relationship between India and China since 2020, because 2020 saw one of the steepest, one of the lowest point in India-China relationship because of the standoff which was taking place at the international border or along the Aksai region. So taking a look at the economic relationship since 2020s, India has shown some kind of aversion since 2020, and as we discussed, it was a military standoff. During COVID itself, it was a military standoff between Indian Army and the Chinese PLA along the Aksai Chin area and Pangong Tso Lake. So as a consequence of this, India started showing aversions with Chinese economy. For example, we did not participate, or rather we backed out of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Now what is RCEP? RCEP is a grouping of 10 ASEAN nations, and these 10 ASEAN nations, they have 6 FTA partners. That includes China, India, Australia, New Zealand, as well as South Korea and Japan. So these 6 FTA partners along with 10 ASEAN members, they created RCEP. Later on, India backed out of this, stating that Indian economy is not strong enough to withstand some of the largest suppliers, global suppliers such as China. So India later on backed out of RCEP. This was also considered as an aversion to the Chinese problem, to the problem that was initiated in 2020. Second, we also restricted the FDI from China to India. Thirdly, we had banned so many Chinese apps in India. Several Chinese apps were banned, and India started to filter out, India started to move against or in favor of China plus one strategy. So what is China plus one strategy? Basically, Western countries are looking for an alternative other than China, because China tries to tweak the market of labor, of raw material, of supply chain basically. So Western nations are looking for an alternative to China, and India started acting as a filler in such situation. So these are the conditions which were exemplifying, elucidating this fact that India has been acting India was trying to be aversive to being proximity, and we were trying to keep ourselves away from the Chinese economy. But then comes Trump. 2024 saw the rise of Trump in USA, and after the rise of Trump, and especially the Liberation Day wherein he tried to declare reciprocal tariff to different nations. There was a time when US has put up 145% tariff on China as well. Later on, although because of communications, these tariffs were brought down to 30%. But as of now, if we talk about all the countries that US is charging very high tariff, barring Brazil, India is one such country which is suffering from 50% tariff from USA. So India is right now encountering 50% tariff, and as of now also, US is warning that there are chances that this tariff can also be increased. So this puts up in an uncomfortable position for India with respect to USA. Looking at China. Now China, as we discussed, initially it was 145% tariff, and later on it was rolled back to 30% because of the communications and negotiations. China also tried to negotiate as soon as China intercepted this or predicted that this kind of behavior can be expected from the rise of Trump in USA. So since that time, China tried to negotiate with India, and they have tried to come in communication in terms of trade relations with India since March. India just replied in the month of June. So, talking about what is the total cost involved, what is the total opportunity cost if we try to sideline USA because of the rising tariff and we try to align ourselves with China. So, what is exactly the cost involved? Now, looking at these factors, the first one, as of now with USA, we have a trade surplus, $40 billion का trade surplus है हमारा US के साथ. But with respect to China, India is suffering from a trade deficit of $100 billion. So, in such scenario, if we try to skip out on USA and try to align ourselves with China in terms of economic relationship, this would not be a very good deal. If we look at this graph talks about India's export-import relationship or balance of trade with respect to China. This green line basically shows the total amount of import we have been carrying out from China starting 2014 to 2024, past decade. On the other hand, the blue line declares what is India's export. So obviously, we have a very negative trade balance with China as of now. Second important cost that will get involved if we try to sideline, if we try to keep ourselves away from USA and try to sideline in terms of improving economic relationship with China, the second thing that turns as an opportunity cost will be the overall manufacturing capacity of China. China as of now is the global manufacturing hub. If you look at this graph, it has a tremendous strength in manufacturing. This is the graph, the brown color line that denotes the manufacturing capacity of China, which is highest as compared to US or Germany or Netherlands or Japan or UK or even India. So, if we see the manufacturing of G7 nations also, apart from, although India doesn't come under G7 nations, if we talk about the total manufacturing capacity of G7 nations, that has declined over a period of time. On the other hand, the manufacturing capacity of China has risen over a period of time. So, it has a huge potential of manufacturing, and if they are manufacturing such huge amount of quantity, obviously they will be ready to dump all of these goods in India. Third important cost that gets involved is sidelining with China. We will be compromising on the China plus one strategy. For example, this is a news article which says that Mexico is trying to raise tariff on imports from China. So, Mexico is apprehensive about China because obviously they are getting feedback from USA that because US is putting so much amount of tariff against China, so Mexico should also be taking steps in that regard. Now, in such scenario, if these countries are raising tariff on import from China and if India like country aligns with China, then there will be obvious apprehensions to raise tariff against India also. And in that case, we will not be successful in our China plus one strategy, the move towards China plus one strategy. India will not turn out to be an alternative to China, rather complementary. Rather, if these countries such as Mexico or USA are raising tariff for China, they will also be raising tariff for India. So, that is the cost involved. The next important thing is overall the cycle of deflation. Now, this is also something very, very important for us to understand. That China, we understood that they are global manufacturing hub. They are producing at a huge quantity. And as of now, China is suffering from deflation. China has been trapped in a cycle of deflation. Now, what do we mean by deflation? Deflation is exactly the opposite of inflation, wherein basically there is less motivation to produce and less motivation to consume. Now, why is it so? Is because the value of the goods is going to decline. So, once they consume, the overall buyer cycle stops because the consumer doesn't want to buy, because they think, why should I buy now if the price of this good is going to decrease in future. So is the case with the producer. If the consumer is not consuming, then why should I produce? So, overall deflation cycle mein, consumer is not buying because the price is expected to go low, and the producer is not producing because the consumer is not consuming. So, overall economic cycle trickles down or slows down. This is what is China encountering right now. So, because of this deflation, the overall consumer producer cycle or flow of money, flow of economics itself has gone down, and this would put up a pressure on India to absorb all of these goods because they are manufacturing and they need some country to buy these produce. Now US will not be one such country, a happy destination to sell out their produce, given the fact that US has put up so much amount of import tariff. So in such scenario, India would be under extreme pressure to absorb cheaper Chinese goods for all other non-US nations including India. If India sidelines with China, the pressure will also be high. So these are the important costs that are involved if we agree to this fact that we are ready to trade with China on the compromise that because US is raising the tariff against India. Now, the last but not the least is India and China are not natural partners. We have seen even in Operation Sindoor that Indian Army was more or less, or Indian Air Force was basically fighting against Chinese weapons just kept in the hands of Pakistani soldiers. So India and China are not natural partners. We do not have a historical or we do not have a cultural relations to get connected to. Additionally, we do not know how long will this private sector going to withstand in China, because the involvement of state into the economy is so high that they may put down the position of private sector anytime. Additionally, the democracy is also heavily compromised in the state of China. So it puts India and China not in the same platform. That is also one of the things that we will have to answer to the world when we try to negotiate with China, at least in terms of economic relationship. So that is just an analysis of how far it would be correct if India tries to negotiate or India tries to agree to build their economic relationship with China at the cost of USA. With that, we come to the end of this topic. If you have any doubt, please do let us know in the comment section below. Thank you so much and all the very best.